love can begin with a deal and end with something real? Today we're diving into a story where hearts are tested, promises are broken, and silence sometimes speaks the loudest. Let's begin. Adrian Blackwell, 32, is the CEO of Blackwell Hotels, a luxury hospitality empire headquartered in Manhattan. He is the embodiment of modern success, handsome, wealthy, cold, and relentlessly driven. With neatly combed black hair and eyes like polished steel, Adrian is the kind of man people respect but fear to approach. He has everything: power, money, status. The one thing he lacks and refuses to believe in is love. To Adrian, marriage is a transaction. He has seen too many alliances forged for gain, too many people drawn to him for prestige, not for who he truly is. In his world, everything, even hearts, can be bought. That morning, his father, Richard Blackwell, founder and chairman of the board, issued an ultimatum in front of all the shareholders. If you don't get married before your 33rd birthday, the company will go to someone else. No choice, no negotiations. Adrian said nothing, but his eyes darkened. To him, marriage wasn't a union, it was a sentence. That evening, instead of attending the high society gala as planned, Adrian Blackwell received a different kind of invitation from a fellow elite. A charity auction. Very private, very entertaining. He didn't care for charity, but power games always intrigued him. The event took place in a clandestine salon inside the Plaza Hotel. The auction room was small but lavish. Crystal chandeliers, gilded walls, men in perfectly tailored tuxedos, and smiles sharp as knives. On stage, the host, a polished middle-aged woman, announced the rules. Gentlemen will bid for an evening with these ladies. Dinner, conversation, all within the bounds of propriety. Soft, amused laughter rose from the room, but Adrian remained still, swirling his whiskey glass. One by one, women stepped on stage, elegant, seductive, glittering. None of them moved him. Then, the final name echoed. Hannah Moore, 24 years old. She stepped into the light wearing a simple white dress, no jewelry, no heavy makeup. Her brown hair fell loose, framing a delicate face. Her eyes, soft yet quietly resolute, shimmered beneath the chandeliers. She stood like a flower, lost in the desert. The room fell silent. Adrian leaned slightly forward. For the first time that night, his heart stirred. Something unfamiliar. He suppressed it instantly. Just a girl, he told himself. Yet his eyes didn't leave her. The bidding began. 10,000, 20, 50. Then a man with a diamond ring called out, 100,000. Hannah trembled. It was clear she didn't want to be there. Adrian's lips curved in a cold smile. $1 million, he said, his voice calm and cutting. The room froze. After the auction, Hannah was brought to meet Adrian in a private room behind the salon. She entered quietly, small and fragile in her plain white dress. Adrian rose to greet her, his expression unreadable. Like a man preparing to sign a business deal. "Miss Moore," he said, extending his hand. "One evening, as agreed." She took it. Her fingers were cold and trembling, and in that moment, when their eyes met, Adrian felt that strange stir inside him again. They dined in an upscale Manhattan restaurant. Hannah sat across from him, nervous, her hands clasped in her lap. She only wanted to survive the night, take the money, and save her sister. But then Adrian sneered. "Do you think one night with you is really worth $1 million?" Hannah looked up, eyes bright despite her trembling lips. "You can buy my time," she replied, "but not my self-respect." The words stopped Adrian short. An unexpected blow from a girl with nothing? The next morning, in his sleek office overlooking the city, Adrian sat with a file in hand. Background on Hannah Moore. No assets, no social media, no scandals. Just a bakery worker from Brooklyn raising a younger sister with a congenital heart condition. He studied a photo, Hannah smiling gently at a customer, her face open and unguarded. A thought struck him like the perfect business move. She needs money, he needs a wife. A marriage in name only, clean, loveless, uncomplicated. A few days later, Adrian walked into the bakery. Hannah looked up, startled to see him. "I have a proposal," he said bluntly. "Marry me for 1 year. I'll cover all of your sister's medical expenses." Hannah froze, her heart racing. "1 year only?" she whispered. "1 year," Adrian said. "No love, just business." Hannah didn't answer Adrian's proposal right away. She asked for 1 day to think. That night, she sat beside her sister's hospital bed, watching her pale face, her faint breathing, the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. She knew she couldn't lose her. The next morning, her voice trembled as she made the call. "I agree, but only for 1 year, and only for my sister." "Fine," Adrian replied, emotionless. "The contract will be sent. Be ready to move in by the weekend." 3 days later, Hannah stepped into Adrian's world, a world of glass, steel, and polished silence. His Manhattan penthouse was like a glass fortress, lavish, pristine, but cold. Adrian merely nodded at her arrival. "Your room is at the end of the hall. The staff will handle everything." "Thank you," she replied softly, still clutching her small canvas bag. The first few weeks passed in silence. Adrian left early, returned late, practically a ghost. Hannah spent her days at the hospital, rarely seeing him at all. She avoided the luxuries, the designer dresses, the chauffeured car, the private chef. Instead, she cooked simple meals, vegetable soup, spaghetti. She left portions in the fridge. No one mentioned it, but she knew he ate them. Adrian said nothing, but he noticed her folding towels, the worn books she read every night, the way she quietly cleaned the kitchen when she thought no one cared. He heard her soft humming, a gentle tune that drifted through the stone-cold walls like sunlight at dusk. Day by day, he began to realize she wasn't like anyone he had ever met. No chasing status, no ambition, no flattery. Hannah didn't try to be noticed, but that only made it harder for Adrian to look away. One late afternoon, Adrian returned home earlier than usual. He stepped into the quiet penthouse and for the first time, didn't feel alone in his own space. In the kitchen, Hannah was quietly folding a tablecloth. A pot of soup simmered gently nearby. Her hair was tied up, a few loose strands falling over her forehead. On the couch, her well-worn book, Anne of Green Gables, lay open as always. Adrian stood at the doorway, saying nothing. He watched her move softly, without noise or pretense, yet every motion seemed to bring warmth into the room. In that moment, he remembered the night of the auction. How she stood on that stage, alone, yet proud. She hadn't wanted to be there, he knew it. But she went through with it for one reason no woman in his life had ever understood: sacrifice. And he had paid $1 million to buy an evening from her. That night had long passed, yet now the memory stabbed at his chest like a blade. He began to question not her, but himself. The feelings stirring inside him. Were they still part of the contract? Or had something real slipped through without him even noticing? The closer Adrian got to Hannah, the more unsettled he became. She didn't try to impress him or demand anything, but that quiet presence was beginning to shake the walls he had built. It was that shift that made Sophia Blackwell, his younger sister, uneasy. She didn't like seeing her brother soften for a girl with no title, no wealth, no glamorous past like the women they were used to. Sophia hired someone to follow Hannah, and soon enough, she got what she needed, or rather, what she wanted Adrian to believe. A photo arrived at Adrian's office just as he had begun to question his own feelings. Hannah and Ethan, her childhood friend, embracing in a hospital corridor. An innocent moment, but through the right lens and a few digital tweaks, it looked like betrayal. Attached were fabricated messages. He says nothing, just a few more months. Adrian went numb. The fragile trust blooming inside him was crushed by jealousy. He said nothing then, but that night, when Hannah returned from the hospital, he was waiting for her in the dark. "What is this?" he said, throwing the photo on the table, voice like ice. Hannah looked down, stunned. "That's Ethan. He was just visiting my sister. He hugged me when I cried." "And this message?" Adrian growled. "Do you take me for a fool?" "Adrian, it's not true, I swear." "You played your part well, Hannah, but The game's over. The contract is terminated. Get out of my house." Now, Hannah stood frozen, tears streaming silently. She didn't beg. She only whispered, "I never lied to you." But Adrian had already turned away. And Hannah, for the first time, walked out of a place that had once held hope, carrying nothing but a shattered heart. The door of the penthouse closed behind Hannah with a cold, final sound, like the last slice of a knife. She left carrying nothing but a small canvas bag, an old book, and a photo with Lily. It rained. Hannah walked through the dark streets of Manhattan, the wind slapping her face, but she felt nothing, not cold, not pain. The only thing she felt was her heart breaking into pieces. She returned to the old apartment in Brooklyn, a tiny, dusty space. She collapsed onto the sagging mattress, staring at the moldy ceiling in silence. 3 days later, the hospital called at dawn. The doctor's voice was low and tight. "Miss Moore, I'm so sorry. Lily didn't make it. A complication after surgery. We did everything we could." Hannah stood frozen. The phone slipped from her hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. At the hospital, she sat beside her sister's bed. Lily's face was pale, unnaturally still, peaceful in a way that hurt. Hannah held her tiny hand, tears falling silently. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I promised I'd protect you." But now, Hannah had nothing left to hold on to. No Lily, no love, no trust in anything. Only a darkness, wide and deep as a void. 2 weeks after Hannah left, Adrian still couldn't sleep. The penthouse now felt unbearably empty. No more meals appeared in the fridge, no more soft humming, and the name Hannah haunted every corner of the walls. One evening, he received an anonymous phone call. A deep, raspy voice said, "Sophia hired me to edit the photo. She told me to make you believe Hannah betrayed you." Attached in the email was the original photo, pure, untouched. Ethan was simply a friend, and that hug was comfort, nothing more. Adrian sat in silence, the weight of his mistake pressing down on him like a vice. That night, he couldn't sleep. The next morning, his eyes bloodshot, he stormed into Sophia's apartment. His face was cold as stone. "Why?" His sister hesitated. "I just wanted to protect you. She's not from our world." "She was my world," Adrian said, voice cracking for the first time. He resigned from his CEO position, handed over all executive power. Everything, his company, his name, his wealth, no longer mattered. There was only one thing left, one thing that still made his heart beat. Finding Hannah. He searched Brooklyn. The bakery, shut down. The hospital, only old records remained. Her apartment, empty and abandoned. Finally, a nurse whispered to him. She moved to Havenwood, a small town up north. Adrian drove through the night. It rained hard. The roads were slick and winding. By the time he arrived, dawn had broken through the mist. He entered a run-down cafe. Then he froze. Behind the counter was Hannah, hair tied back, faded apron, lifeless eyes, washing glasses like a ghost of herself. There was no smile, no light, only the girl who once brought his world to life, now standing there in silence. Adrian didn't call her name. He stood quietly in the rain, watching from a distance, his heart heavy. Hannah didn't notice him, or if she did, she gave no sign. She simply continued her work, as if the entire world around her had faded away. He didn't try to explain, didn't beg, didn't say a word of apology. From that day on, Adrian stayed in Havenwood. He rented a small house on the edge of town, not far from the cafe. Each day, he came and sat in the corner of the shop, ordered a cup of coffee, and quietly watched her. He didn't attempt to speak. He just sat there, like an anonymous guest, in silence. And then he began leaving traces. One day, after work, Hannah returned to find the roof of her rental house had been repaired. New sheets of tin gleamed in the morning sun. No one claimed credit. But by the window, there was a note. "Fixed, don't worry." Then, solar-powered lights suddenly appeared along the dark path she always walked home. A sandwich box showed up every morning at the cafe's door. No name, no note. Hannah ate them but asked no questions. She knew who had done it. When the cafe was short-staffed, Adrian silently stepped into the kitchen, fumbling with soup pots and pancake pans. He wasn't skilled. But his clumsiness made Hannah smile for the first time in months. Just a little, but it was real. Bit by bit, without saying a word, Hannah understood. This was his way of saying, "I'm sorry." And for the first time in a long time, she began to smile again. Spring had come to Havenwood, carrying the scent of wildflowers and soft golden sunlight that spilled across the fields. The long gray days had begun to melt into warm afternoons. Hannah was no longer a shadow of herself, still quiet, but now slowly coming back to life. She taught art classes to local children, sometimes even chuckled at Adrian's clumsy attempts in the kitchen. And each morning, instead of ignoring his presence, she placed an extra cup of coffee on the counter next to the one he always ordered. No words, but a small sign that forgiveness was beginning to bloom. Adrian never rushed. He knew love couldn't be forced, so he waited, silently, patiently, every day. Then one evening he walked to the field where Hannah was sketching. She sat beneath the old oak, her hair falling loosely around her face, the sunset casting a warm blush on her cheeks. In her hands was her sketchbook, filled with new drawings, full of life like her quiet breath. Adrian sat beside her. He didn't speak. Instead, he held out a handmade flower crown, woven from wild daisies, soft leaves and grass, crooked and clumsy, but made from his heart. Hannah looked at it, then at him. No clauses this time? He shook his head gently. No contracts, no rules, just one promise. He paused, his voice low, rough. "I can't promise you a perfect life, but I promise not to leave, to be by your side when you're sad or smiling, in sunshine or in storms." The spring wind whispered through the wildflowers. Hannah gazed at the crown, uneven, awkward, yet within it was a sincerity words could never hold. She didn't answer with words, she simply held out her wrist. Adrian gently slipped the crown on, like a wedding ring not made of gold, but full of vow. This time no one was forced, there was only love. After all the loss. If this story touched your heart even just a little, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little hope today. And tell me in the comments, have you ever believed in love even when everything seemed broken? Until next time, take care, lovely soul.